Hi everybody, this is Oksana, and today we're going to be making this pendant here. I kind of had this idea where I wanted to try adding cute little faceted beads here between the wires, and I wanted the beads to just kind of match the stone. I think this is also really going to pop when I oxidize the copper, because like this bead right now kind of blends in, but I think once I darken the copper you'll see it better. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what it looks like once I've oxidized. And here it is after being oxidized. So if you want to see how I made this pendant, just keep watching. I'm going to be using 3 pieces of 20 gauge square copper dead soft wire, and they're about 10 inches long, and my stone is a teardrop shaped Labradorite stone, and it's pretty big here. So if I measure it in inches, it is nearly 2 inches. It's about 1 3/4 inches tall. And then if I measure it in millimeters for you here, it's probably like 43, 44 millimeters. So I'm going to be using this 20 gauge wire here. Let me show you the spool. So I get my wire from riogrande.com. Comes on these big spools because I use a lot of it. And then I'm also going to be using a thin wire to make the connections, and this is going to be my half round 24 gauge wire here. It's also dead soft copper. So I'm just going to take it, just take the end of it, leave it connected to the spool so I'm not cutting the thin wire, and I'm taking these 3 wires and I'm just kind of arranging them so they're just all right next to each other. Kind of run them through my fingers, and then if you look closely you'll see that they kind of stack nicely like this because they're square wires. So if you have them, sorry, I'm just trying to like jumble them up, but it's not working. Maybe like this or something. No, they fix themselves like this. So you have like the angle of the square wire, you just kind of run it through your fingers and it puts them so the flat edges of the square wire stack together nicely. That's what I like to do. So I'm just grabbing roughly in the middle of these wires, and I'm taking the tail end of my half round wire here, and I'm putting it the flat side down, the rounded side up. So the rounded side is what I see. And I'm just wrapping that little tail end around a few times to connect those 3 wires together. And then after you've wrapped it around a few times, your little end could very well be shorter than my little end, but you would have wrapped it around a couple of times at least. And then now we're gonna flip it this way, and I'm going to continue wrapping with this wire, but because it's connected to the spool I have to guide it here with my hand so it doesn't twist, and I have to turn the piece. So it's a slightly different technique. You can't just wrap around and around like we did with the little end because it's connected to the spool, and if you do that it starts twisting, and then you have the flat side starts coming up and it messes everything up for you. So I'm just going to do that for a little bit, and once we have this little connection here, we just grab our wire cutters and trim off these little ends here. So I'm just trimming them so they're on the same side like this. And now I'm just gonna grab my pliers and I'm gonna press down those wire ends so they're not sticking up, and just press down on this whole thing like this, and both wire ends are here on this side. So what we want to do now, because my stone is a teardrop and it's going to be point down in this design, what I'm going to do is attempt to bend this in the middle of the little wrap. And so I want these little wire ends to end up facing the stone so they get hidden away. So I'm bending it this way. So this will be the outside that we see, and then the stone will go in there. So as you can see, it's a little bit uneven. There's more wraps on one side than the other, but that's okay because I just did the teeniest little bend. Now I can keep bending it because it's kind of a sharp point at the end of that stone. So I can kind of bend accordingly and try to even it out as I do. And then once I think visually it's getting close to the way the point looks on my stone, I'm gonna grab my stone and just test it out and see how it fits in there. All right, so that fits in there quite nicely. So I'm just pushing my stone into that point. You would want to lay this down flat on a table. I'm just doing this in the air in front of the camera, and just gently bend all of these wires around your stone and bring them together here at the top. So obviously mine are quite to the side. That's why I changed positioning, so I'm holding it so I can see better the top of my stone, so I can determine better where the center is, where I want these wires to come together. And then you just kind of mess around with that a little bit. And I usually bend these side to side to get that nice bend in the both of them. And then when I'm happy that it's all nice and even and centered, I just pop my stone out. You can reinforce the bends with your pliers to make them a little bit sharper. You can kind of press on them together this way as well. But in the end, you just want all these wires to kind of stack together, so you have these three all together and then these three on the other side, and you don't want any of them to move out of place or start crisscrossing one another. So that's something just to be careful of. But once it all looks lined up nicely, these wires are just going straight across. None of them are switching places, because sometimes they will do that and it'll just kind of mess everything up. You have to put them back in their position. So we're just going to grab the tail end of our half round wire again here and start wrapping it around. After you've wrapped a few times, you've connected all these wires at the top here. I'm just going to press down on that gently. And then this wire end, I'm going to tuck it through this gap from the back to the front. I'm going to pull on it. And then I'm just going to trim it really short, so it's just kind of hidden away there. So I'm going to wrap around just a couple of more times here. I'm just going to press down on that. So now if you just follow along these front two wires, here they are here coming out at the top, and those are the two wires that you want to separate out that you want to be your bail. So we're just going to pull them forward like this. You can push the other wires a little bit back if you want to make some space, and we're going to continue this wire. We haven't cut it, it's still there connected to the spool, and now we're just going to turn the piece and guide the wire, and that is going to be our bail. I'm just going to do this for a little bit until it's about an inch, could be a teeny bit shorter than an inch. That's usually how long I make my bail, but of course it's up to you. You can make your bail smaller or larger, whatever works for you. All right, so once you've done it for a while, we're going to trim it and where you want to trim it is here on this side here. So if we're looking at our pendant from the front, and here is our bail, the little wire end is here on the back, because that's a part where it'll get hidden away. So now I'm just going to press over everything, press it down flat, including that little wire end so it's not sticking up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these two wires coming out the side here, and I'm going to bend them to this side, and then I'm going to take the backmost wire. Technically it's here from this other side, but I'm also going to bend it to this side here. So now this side has 3 wires and this only has 1 wire. So what we're going to do now is just shape our bail. I like to just bend it with my finger, but you can use some kind of rounded object like round nose pliers to give it this nice little curve. And as we bend it, we're taking these little ends of wire here and tucking them through. So I'm just gonna hold this area here with my pliers, and that allows me to take these little wire ends and bend them here to the front. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take one of the wire ends. So here they are. There's like a left and a right one. So I'm going to first bend the left one a little bit more to the side, and then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to bend it to the same side. So here they are here. And then I'm going to take this one that's kind of the closer one to the bail, and I'm going to bend it around because I'm making a connection. I want to attach it so our bail is secure. So I'm just trimming it, leaving myself a little wire end, and then I'm just tucking that wire end in here and just pressing down on that. Okay, so now we just have the 1 wire coming out here. So I'm just gonna take this 1 wire and kind of adjust it a little bit because I'm gonna bring it up, but when I bring it up I want it to just kind of cover up this other wire. Like this. So I'm going to take this wire now and bringing it across the bail here. Let me move this out of the way, giving it a nice little curve like this. Let me zoom in a little bit. And you don't want it to lay on top of this wire, so move this wire out of the way if you need to. And now we're going to bring this to the back. We are going to trim it, and we're going to tuck that in here. And this wire here, we're going to follow along the curve of the other wire like this. And then once we get here to the top, we're just going to take it and we're going to kind of curve it in there and tuck it through the bail. We are just wrapping it around the bail, connecting it so it's going in and then all the way around. So once I have it wrapped, I'm just going to tighten that up by pressing on it with my pliers. So pressing down on that, tightening it up, and now we're just going to trim that, but leave a little end, a little wire end, so we can tuck that little wire end away in there. Just like that, press it down in there. There it is, inside of the bail. So this is what it looks like now. I am going to pop my stone in here in 1 second. Just adjusting this little wire end. So I'm just going to grab my stone before I do the rest of this. I'm going to bend the back wires. like this to trap the back of the stone, and then the frontmost wire. I'm just going to try and separate that a little bit. So there is a space there for me to put my pliers in there, kind of work those down to the bottom and make a bend like that. Same thing on this other side. All right, so now our stone is trapped from the front and from the back. And it's time to just finish off our decorations up here. So what I'm gonna do is we have 3 wires, and if you look at them, they're kind of lined up. 1, 2, 3. So I'm gonna take the frontmost one, if I'm looking at them kind of this way, the frontmost one. And I'm just curving it across like this. Then I'm taking the next one and I'm curving it kind of underneath. We want it to be close to the wire up here, but then we want it to have a bit of a gap here. And then same thing with this one, so just kind of pulling it down so it's close up here, but then there's a gap once you get to here. And we're not finishing these off quite yet. So now I'm just going to take a little piece here, or it's actually not that little, it's kind of a long piece of half-round wire, that same half-round wire that we've been using. I dropped my little measuring tape, but it is 10 inches, so exactly the same length as the square wires that we cut. It's probably too long, but it's better to have it long in case sometimes this thin wire can break, so I like to just have it nice and long. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get in here and put it through right underneath this wire here. And I have the flat side of the half-round wire facing us, so that when I go to do this and wrap it around, it's going to be the half-rounded side that shows like this. So we're just making a connection with the wire. We are just wrapping it around just like this. This is probably good enough, so I'm just gonna trim this little wire end so it's nice and short, and I can take that little tiny bit of it and just kind of tuck it in here to hide it away. So now we have this nice long piece of wire coming out here, and it's connected. I'm just gonna bring it here across. So I'm just bringing it across like this to see where it would go, where I should be adding my bead. And I just need to bring this little wrap down just a little bit there. It's a little bit too high. There we go. Perfect. That should be good. So now it's time to grab a little bead. So I just have some of these tiny little crystal faceted beads that I think the colors of them would match nicely with my stone. So this is just a blue one, and I am trying to get it. There we go. Struggling to get it on this half round wire here. All right, so here we go. And this is why we didn't lock these wires in place, because it's hard to predict the spacing of the bead. So if you need to move them, you have the ability to move them. So this bead seems to fit in here quite nicely. So what I'm going to do is just kind of hold it in place and then take my half round wire and wrap it around this wire here like this to attach my little bead. And I'm just going to wrap again. This time I'm just kind of turning the piece as I wrap. Just wrapping around this wire here. Whichever way is easier for you to do it. I like to just kind of turn the piece. It helps me guide this wire and keep it from getting twisted. So now I'm just going to come in here, and the little wraps that I did, I'm just going to bring them closer together. Like that. And now I'm going to add another bead. So the next bead I chose is a yellow color. So we have blue, like the blue of the stone, then we have yellow, and there's a little bit of green as well. So my last bead will be green. So I'm just taking this tiny yellow bead and adding it on here and putting it here in this little space, in this little gap, and just doing the same thing, taking my, oops, it's getting a little tangled, taking my half round wire, just wrapping it around like this. And now, after I've done a couple of wraps there, I'm not going to do as many here because I don't want it to move too far down and be like on the stone. I'm going to take my little green bead, I'm going to slide it on there, and again I'm just wrapping around to connect a few times, just like this. And now I am just taking these wires and just kind of moving them up, getting ready to be tucking them away. So just kind of swooping them across there. And this very top wire, I'm not the biggest fan of this gap here, so I'm going to try and cover that up by just making a little swirl here. Maybe even a couple of swirls, so you can use your pliers to adjust that swirl. And now I'm going to do another swirl right next to it. I'm just going to get in here with my pliers. Oop, trying to make that nice and tiny. And then this wire can just come across here and go to the back, and we'll trim that off. So here's what that looks like. We're just gonna trim and tuck that wire away. Now I'm wondering if I should do a swirl with this wire too. Maybe just one this time. It's up to you guys. If you think it looks better without the swirls, feel free to not do them. All right, that looks good to me. So I'm just gonna bring it to the back and trim and tuck away that wire end. And with this last wire here on the front, one second, there we go. Couldn't quite get in there. All right, so with this last wire, since I have all this half round wire, I might as well, I'm just gonna raise it up so it's easier for me to get in there. I might as well just use up that half round wire and wrap it around. So I'm just guiding it with my finger here as I turn the piece. And I think it makes for a pretty look to the wire as well. A little extra decoration. And you just have to stop and see if it reaches across. So you can either have it go across and then tuck it away, just like we did with our other wires, or alternatively, if you want to, you can make a swirl with it. You can attach it and make a swirl, so it's kind of up to you. Or you could even attach it to this side as well. Let's see what that would look like. So if I go for a little bit more, I can attach it there. So let's try that. All right, so this little wrap, kind of right at the edge where this wire is that I want to attach it to. So I'm just going to take my wire, and as I put it under, I'm sliding it underneath this wire here as well. So hold on. As I pull on it, you'll see. Like that. So that way, because if we're going to make a swirl, we need the swirl to be kind of nicely attached here so it doesn't lift up from the stone if it gets caught in like a sweater or someone's hair. So now I'm going to go ahead and wrap around just this wire here because it's already attached to the edge, so we can wrap just around the wire here, and then I'm just going to slide that little wrap down to tighten it up. And then wrap just a few more times, and then I'll go ahead and I'll trim. All right, so that should be good. So I'm going to trim the wire so that the little wire end can be kind of here on the back and not visible from the front. I'm going to trim this wire but leave myself an end of it so that I can make a swirl with it. And now I'm going to grab my round nose pliers here. I'm going to take the little end of this wire. I like to kind of squish the wire end with my pliers when I make my swirls, but however you make your swirls, then I'm just going to grab that wire end and start swirling. There we go. And I'm just gonna press down on it a little bit so it's not sticking up, and it's attached right here. You can see the swirl is attached, so it's not going to lift up. So it is secure. So here we have our beaded embellished pendant. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.